Hey everyone, welcome to yet another Teach Kelvin Your Things session. It's been a while I've done any of this. I think this 2025 has been like the year with the smallest amounts of sessions we've done, but I'm excited because I'm going to be talking ORMs and ODMs and a little bit of AI because of a tool he's working on. But I'm going to let him talk about all that. So let's meet Valerie. How you doing, Valerie?
Hi, doing good. My name is Val. I'm the maintainer of Mongoose. I've been the maintainer of Mongoose since about 2014. So I've been in the Node ecosystem for a very, very long time, or at least for most of Node's lifespan.
Oh, awesome, awesome. So for those who don't know about Mongoose, can you just like let's have that as a primer? What is Mongoose?
Yeah, Mongoose is a ODM, object document mapper for Node.js and MongoDB. Last I checked, it was the most downloaded database framework for Node.js because Mongoose has been around since 2011. So Mongoose pretty much started right around when Node started, got really popular really quickly. Other projects have been catching up, of course, but Mongoose still overall is very heavily used.
So, before you continue with this TKYT session, I want to tell you about the sponsor of this session, which is the African Engineer. It's a premium publication that it's going to dive deep into stories of African startups and big tech. So, if you're tired of the only publications that come out from Africa's big tech, it's all about fundraising and all, but you care about what impressive engineering African tech startups and big tech are building, this is the publication for you. You could totally join for free by just putting in your email and joining the community so you get notifications where issues are out. So the African Engineer is for you if you're an engineer or you're a CTO, a founder, or an operator, even if you're an investor, a global observer, or a student, or a community builder, you will definitely find issues in the African Engineer that will stoke your interest. If you're interested in African startups, all you have to do is come here and put in your email, and then you join the community, and then you get notifications when new issues are out. So let's get back into the session. Hmm. Awesome. Like it's interesting. I didn't notice that is the most downloaded database package. That's amazing. Like how is it maintaining something so useful to a lot of people?
Um, took a lot of practice and a lot of getting used to. I mean, when I first took over as maintainer in April 2014, I was overwhelmed. I was like, the amount of GitHub issues coming in, I had never seen anything like it before. I would get like 5, 10 GitHub issues a day, and I was just, yeah, completely overwhelmed. Didn't know what to do with it. But took it one step at a time, and kind of, I trained myself to deal with the whole inbound. Things got better over time, got more practice, and just kept on going ever since.
Hmm. That's interesting. I'm really interested at like the backstory because I have like a similar experience, mine with Sales.js. Um, I've been the lead maintainer for a while now, and just interested in the trajectory in your Opus's journey that led to you maintaining Mongoose since 2014. Since you like, it's been a while, and I just want to know, like, I think others would want to know, so like, how did that happen? Like, how long were you using Mongoose? What was it like becoming the maintainer? The
Yeah.
journey.
First let's start with the Mongoose story. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Mongoose was originally the first commits were made by the LearnBoost team. LearnBoost was they were an ed tech startup that made a lot of early contributions to Node.js. Um, Guillermo, the Vercel CEO, was
Mm-hmm.
their CTO, if memory serves. So he's credited as the author of Mongoose in our package.json. Um, so like yeah, LearnBoost, they like if if you were around Node in the early days, around like 2012, 2013, you'll remember LearnBoost because like Express was under the LearnBoost GitHub repo and Mongoose was under the LearnBoost GitHub repo. LearnBoost seemed to have basically like built all of Node or the entire Node ecosystem pretty early on. Um, so, so long story short, LearnBoost, another developer who worked at LearnBoost, Aaron Heckman, became the maintainer of Mongoose, became like the primary guy working on Mongoose. He left LearnBoost to join MongoDB at some point, and then he was at MongoDB for about a year and change. He left MongoDB late 2013, I want to say. He tried to continue maintaining Mongoose, but what ended up, he was too busy with his new role, which didn't involve using Mongoose. So around April 2014, he put out a call asking on Twitter asking for maintainers. And well, I raised my hand. I got push access on a Friday, and I was pushing code and making releases on Monday. So my journey, or kind of how I got to that stage. See, that was so. First things first, how I first heard of MongoDB. I worked in an algorithmic trading shop in right after college, say around 2000, summer 2012. I'm working at this algo trading firm. They're very big on building everything in house for performance and reliability, to the point where they were like building their own TCP stack implementation because Red Hat's clearly wasn't fast enough. How could you function with Red Hat's built-in TCP stack? Like crazy. No, but then they started using MongoDB for some limited use cases. So I was like, hey, I should check this out. This project is probably pretty good. And well, I started using it, kept on using it. A couple of buddies of mine and I started doing some hackathons in late 2012. So we started using the MongoDB Node driver because we were interested in tinkering with Node. We had been doing Rails for a while, but we're curious to try what this whole Node thing was about. So we started working with Node and MongoDB. Found Mongoose pretty early, and then realized, hey, this Mongoose thing makes things a lot easier. Mostly saved us a lot of callbacks because that was a big pain point in the early Node days. So right around late 2012 was when I started working with Mongoose. Around 2013, I started working at MongoDB, so that's where Aaron and I got connected. And then probably around April 2014, while I was working at MongoDB for a year and change, I had I was on my way to a bachelor party in South Carolina, just mindlessly scrolling Twitter on the air train to the airport, and then I see Aaron saying, "Hey, I can't really maintain Mongoose anymore. Anyone want to take over?" Yes, quick reply before something else gets there. And well, that's how that ended up happening. And yeah, then on a kind of
Wow.
like a more personal note, that was a Friday, so I took over Mongoose, and then on that Monday, I went out on a date with the woman that would become my wife. So it was a very my first date, so my wife. So it was a very big
Wow.
weekend.
Yeah, quite eventful weekend it was. That's amazing. Thank you for the backstory. So you worked at MongoDB, and then you by some happenstance started like maintaining Mongoose, which is till today like the most used um DB ODM for Mongo. So I think Node.js and MongoDB sort of have like a love story going on because I think there's just this um I'll call it affinity by developers who build backend with Node. So tend to want to pick MongoDB, right? Like, and you've been in the space for a while, like with MongoDB, Mongo. It's like, I'm really curious because for me, I started doing web dev before I started Node.js. So I was already using databases like Postgres and MySQL. And it wasn't an easy buy-in for me to pick MongoDB so far. But I see it's really, and I get it, it's quite appealing. So from your inside experience and with your knowledge of working with Mongo's, like why do you think MongoDB really caught on like greatly with Node developers?
I would say probably first it starts with just historical reasons. Um, Node
Mm,
and MongoDB kind of like they started becoming popular at the same time. They were kind of new hip technologies in the kind of like 2010 to 2014 era. Um, so like Node.js, if memory serves, the first public release was 2009, I want to say. And then like MongoDB had its first public release in 2008, somewhere in that range. So they kind of came out at the same time. They both they kind of like hit their hype curve kind of at the same time. And then they just kind of seemed like a natural fit just because like if you go back to 2010, 2011, kind of like the idea of storing just a document in a database or storing like what looks like a JSON object was pretty novel. It was not something that very many databases or very many people supported. Like this was before JSON-B became a thing in Postgres. So like it became something where like both Node and MongoDB kind of helped people rethink the way that web development was done, and they kind of came together in a really synergistic way where like Node just let you, okay, I have good enough concurrency and I can just work with JavaScript on the back end as well as JavaScript on the front end. But then you add in MongoDB where you also take that to the logical extension of I'm just storing something that looks like a JavaScript object in the database.
mhm,
It's like I'm not worrying about migrations. I'm not worrying about managing anything operationally on the database. The database is just storing the data, and my application is just interpreting the data. So there's no kind of like, there's no database falling out of sync. There's no needing to create columns explicitly. All that just kind of happens in your application layer.
mm. Interesting. Yeah, I like this. So the flexibility of MongoDB is something I miss, like in my apps, like when I do things like Postgres. Because, for example, if you like you said, if you add a new column, you have to become like a database expert at the moment to go add that in production because you don't want to run your um like run your migrations over there as well, like just so that you don't lose data and all. So with MongoDB, just it's really that abstraction. I'm not gonna lie, it really feels good where you just don't worry about migrations. When you add a new column, it's available. It is amazing. I like it. So um why does so let's go back to Mongoose because of course it's the ODM you're working on. So there have been a couple of other ODMs and ORMs in the Node.js space, right? And I think Prisma, SQLize, and a couple, and even in Salesline we have Waterline. So my question is, and even most developers, not just for MongoDB, most developers with database, sometimes they feel like an ODM and an ORM will add like too much of a overhead, so they want to like give raw SQL in their apps or just have their own little abstraction for the case of performance. So how has Mongoose been able to like hold his own like all these years? Because it's like literally really, really old and solid. Like and in comparison with these other newer ORMs and this as well as the option of doing like raw MongoDB queries.
It's So I'd say one of the differences between Mongoose as an ODM versus a traditional ORM is like more traditional ORMs tend to break up kind of the objects that you have in your application into rows and columns. So like they split things up. Uh, so like traditionally, if you had an ORM, like let's say you had a user with a list of say roles, like you would
Mm-hmm.
the ORM would break up the roles into a separate table. So like the data that lived in your application would not look like the data in your database. Mongoose, for the most part, doesn't do that. There is if you define a user schema or a user model in Mongoose, the way that your user model looks in Node.js is the same thing that gets stored in MongoDB. So I think that's pretty much the big difference that I see. I haven't really worked too closely with tools like Prisma or Drizzle enough to know whether they still do
Mm-hmm.
that or whether there's like more JSON-B things baked in. But yeah, no
Yeah.
minimal transformation. Mongoose is more about like providing a framework to build things on top of MongoDB, as well as adding things like schema validation, more so than a transformation layer, which I think is where a lot of the headache comes with ORMs, was trying to like reason about, okay, like here's my object in my application, where is all this data stored in the database?
Mm. Awesome. So let's talk. Still on Mongoose. I am curious if you could like talk a bit about architecture because the like for databases has always been like the bottleneck for apps and all. And of course, like I said, most people like they get to. I think for ORMs and ODMs, like one of the selling point is how fast it could be. So can you just let's talk a bit about Mongoose and its architecture? Like how does it work? As you said, like it doesn't do what a traditional ORM would do. Can we get into that a little bit before we get into code? Really,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
in
high
terms
level.
of not, oh, yeah, high level. Um, in Mongoose, you define a schema, which defines kind of like what properties your object has. So you have like a user schema as name is a string, email is a string, age is a number, um, basic details like that. And you have a connection, so connect to MongoDB. Um, and then you combine connection and schema into a model. Um, a model is kind of a fancy constructor. So you have a user model. You can use the user model to instantiate an instance of a user model, which is a user document, which is an instance of a user, say name Val, email val@gmail.com. And then, yeah, and when you work with models, models expose kind of the basic MongoDB CRUD API as static methods on the model. So you would say like user.find to fetch a list of users. So at a high level, that's the architecture. And again, not minimal transformation between what's stored in MongoDB and pulled into Node.js. There are ways where Mongoose transforms data a little bit. Getters and setters. Populate is another big one. Kind of that's Mongoose's outer join equivalent.
Yeah, yeah, that is a good one. Yeah, awesome. So I think we should. So what's the most misunderstood feature of Mongoose, like you've seen from like user?
And everyone ends up using Mongoose for schema validation. I think that's the core feature. Beyond that, middleware defaults, also two big ones. Plugins, the plugin ecosystem is a big one. Yeah, custom getters and setters. Virtuals is another important property. Virtuals are basically Mongoose's computed properties equivalent. It's like, if memory serves, you're a Vue fan, right?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
big Vue fan as well, but under the hood,
Yes.
Mongoose has a lot of under the hood, Mongoose has a lot of change tracking. That is actually
Mm,
not too dissimilar from the way Vue does things, and we also have compute properties, not too dissimilar from Vue's. And the change
mm,
tracking under the hood is actually another neat feature, bit of a performance optimization that Mongoose provides, which is the idea is that if you fetch a user from the database and then you update their name, say, I've loaded a user with name Val, I want to change the name to Valeri. There's no reason for me to update every single property in the document. I just want to track the fact that, okay, somewhere in my application, I set user.name equals Valeri. And so when I call user.save, Mongoose tracked the set on user.name, and now it sends just that when you save the document to the database instead of sending the
That's
full
neat.
document.
That's efficient. So I'm looking at a couple of Mongoose code right now. I think we could start like you showing how Mongoose would work from like schema and validation, and then we just talk about a couple of things. Is that good?
Yeah, that's good. I'll just share my
Yeah, I
screen.
want to see how it
So,
works. I don't know. Like I didn't have the opportunity to try out Mongoose myself because it was from like I think I've been using Waterline for like since I've been working with Node until so it's just been the only ORM I've been um using for years now. So I want to see how this one works.
so yeah, here I have a one of Mongoose's sample apps. We recently added next server actions sample app to our sample apps repo. I think
Okay.
yeah, slash sample apps. So yeah, this is right here. You can share the
Wow.
link to this in the show notes if you want.
Of course, I will.
So yeah, I believe you had like Lee Robinson from Next.js talking about server actions a couple shows ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this is so I'm going to be following up on that. I built kind of like a single page or a single file application using Mongoose and Next server actions. So yeah, general idea here.
Awesome.
First everything starts with the package.json, right? So the server actions repo has a package.json, um, basic dependencies, Next.js 16, Mongoose 8. Um, we also have Mongoose Studio, which I will show a little bit more of, and
Mm-hmm.
start script. Now, pretty much all the logic lives in this in app/page.js. I'm just going to have like a very simple page where you can enter in user information. And this entire layout, as well as the backend, lives in lives in just one page.js file. So the front end is this little React app. General idea is loading up all the users that exist in the database using user.find, then a form to add a new user, and a unordered list that displays the list of current users. On the back end, we have an add user action, user.create. This is how you create a new document in MongoDB. And here's all the Mongoose setup. So import Mongoose, connect to MongoDB. I have MongoDB running locally on the default port, and just set the database name to Mongoose test. Here's the Mongoose schema that I was talking about. So Mongoose schema is like a configuration object for a model. This is where you define what properties your document has, any options you want, any plugins you want to add, computed properties. And then you go here and you create a model. Again, once you're connected, find a schema, create a model. And all that adds up to, we go here, and I can I'm going to add a user. So here, I just added a user. Great. So now now the page starts finding users. Now, going to do just like a quick overview of Mongoose Studio. Mongoose Studio is a MongoDB GUI that we're working on. That's supposed to be Mongoose centric. It's supposed to operate as kind of a sidecar to your app, so you don't have to go in and install a new or configure any new GUI yourself. It's just an npm package. There's a little bit of setup for Next.js. There's a pages API studio.js file that mounts the backend onto your but that mounts the backend for Mongoose Studio in your Next.js app. And then there's a little with Mongoose Studio hook for next config or in your next config. But once you add those, then you get a nice little GUI. You'll see that my app is running on localhost 3000, and then I have localhost 3000/studio, where I can refresh, and now I get a list of my users. So
Mm,
you just zoom out. This kind of looks
neat.
more like a conventional GUI. And then it supports tables as well as JSON mode. So kind of like this is a more idiomatic way to display MongoDB data. So I could go in and add some new users like Tusty2. Okay, so I just added a new user. Now where things get nice with MongoDB and with working with Mongoose is adding new fields, because like one of the things that really got me into MongoDB early on was how easy it is to just modify your application as time goes on.
Yes.
Like every app you work on, like you're going to be adding fields to the database. Like, yeah, most of the clients I work with, like I'm adding new fields to the database several times a week. So, like making that easy is a big win for us. So, like, I mean, basic things. Mongoose does support like validation and getters and setters. So you can do things like here, trim true. That'll make it so that we trim out any white space in the name. So if I go here
That's
and
neat.
say, no leading or trailing white space in this username. I can also like add some basic validation logic. So min length 6 means if I try to enter in a 3-letter name, I'm going to get an error. Pardon the ugly default Next.js error alert. That's because it would have been pretty complicated, unfortunately, I would have had to break out this application into multiple files in order to make this error modal better. So I didn't do that because I wanted to retain the simplicity of it. So now
Okay.
let's see.
Yeah. So if we, to the validation error that we just got, how do we send that to to the UI, for example? Like you still have to break out the app?
No. So in
Okay.
order to make the error handling better, I would have had to break this app apart. But the idea
Okay.
is that await user.create throws an error if
Mm-hmm.
name has length less than 6 because of this configuration option here.
Mm.
So
Okay.
like that
Nice.
error dialog is because happens because this add user server action throws, and that's just Next.js's default error handler. So Next.js says like, okay, you have a runtime validation error. Let me see if
Okay.
the stack trace is
Sweet.
anything useful. No, it has line 31. Uh, I think it's just pointing to this right here. Okay.
Yeah. That's neat.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and add an email property. I'm just gonna trim it. And then there's also like these little setters like lowercase. So like if I want to just make sure
No,
all emails are consistently lowercase, that helps. Let me
I
add an
like it.
input for the email. And email. Okay. And then I should be able to, let's see if that works. So hey, here we go. Over here I can say to Val plus test that Karpov.io. Cool. And now now my users have emails too. So there we go. Email.
Nice.
Um, existing users just have a null email, which shows up as empty. And then here in
Yeah.
Studio, I have, okay, emails undefined. And here's an email showing up. Cool. So yeah, that's adding a new field. Then another nice thing that Mongoose adds on top of MongoDB is references via Populate. So I can do things like, okay, a user has friends. So friends is of type object ID. MongoDB by default, the object documents have
Yeah.
have an underscore ID property that's of type object ID,
Mhm.
which is MongoDB's kind of like built-in way of generating random IDs, similar to a UUID, but not quite the same. So here we have friends. We'll go here.
What editor are you using, by the way, out of curiosity? Because of course, why not?
Oh, this is called Zed. It's
Oh,
similar to Cursor. They're all kind of the
okay.
same. I started using Zed because when I got this laptop, it was running Ubuntu 24, and Cursor did not run on Ubuntu 24 very well.
Weird. Interesting. Nice. It looks good. I'm still stuck on the Visual Studio Code, so
Okay, so comma separated. And so here's how we save a list of friends. Friends is going to come in as a list of comma separated emails. We're going to find all the friends by email, and then we're going to save the friends as an array of object IDs. So here, let's go in and also enter in friends. So let's see here. No friends. Everybody has no friends. But let's enter in Kelvin. And Val plus test lab Karpov.io. Okay, so now friends is a object ID, right?
Mhm.
But and yeah, here in Mongoose Studio, I'll take a look. We have this new document, Kelvin, friends, and friend is this particular user, which happens to line up with this right here.
Yeah.
So what Mongoose Populate does is we come in here. Okay, here we go, and populate.
Hmm. I think you're missing a dot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So populate will make it so that now friends is going, when we send friends back to the front end, friends is going to be an array of user objects, not just object IDs. So we're going to go here and say friends.map friend.name. So we're going to map out the friend names. And hey, look, Kelvin has friends Valeri Karpov too.
Yay.
Yeah, that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
so
So
we got that. We got custom getters, and yeah, on the studio front, again, given that you have schemas in Mongoose, Studio can autocomplete things for you. Like, okay, I can filter by name.
mm,
Use MongoDB query operators. So like, let's see, friends.1 or friends.0. This will query for users that have at least one friend. So just one of those. And then, yeah, another neat thing that we've added into Mongoose Studio is the AI feature. So the AI chat tab. So like, this was the AI thing that you mentioned before. So like,
yeah.
what chat is good for? Again, basic things like, okay, find users whose name starts with K. What this will do is it'll generate a script that you can modify and edit or execute um, to answer this question. The neat thing is that like, this chat already has access to all of your Mongoose schemas, so it knows your data structures. It knows any methods and statics you define. It has a lot of good context, basically. And Why is this
Yeah,
taking so long?
yeah.
Something's
Like,
bugged
is it
out.
going online? It doesn't have to go online, right?
It does have to go online. Well, it does have to make an
Okay.
API request to either ChatGPT or Claude. So here, find
Okay.
users whose name starts with K. Okay, cool. We have Kelvin. And then it can do neat things like charts is another thing that it supports. So let's go in here and let's draw a pie chart for users by the
Oh,
first letter of their name.
that's cool.
So let's do this. And hey, look, 2 users start with a V, 2 with T, and 1 with K. Um, so
That's
there's that.
brilliant.
And then, you download
What's the
as a
code like?
PNG. Oh, the actual code.
Yeah.
Um, so
Mm.
not very sophisticated. All it does is just the front end looks for objects with a $chart property, and then $chart contains a chart.js config. So like this ends up being just a chart.js config.
I like it. It's really nice. It's the short thing is gonna be useful to like
Oh, and
for visualization and all.
my other favorite feature works on mobile too. So like you can imagine that, say you're out in the you're out at Disney World with your friends or with your kids is my favorite example. You're in line for 2 hours and the client needs something and you need to update user Kelvin's name uh to John. Go ahead and do that. Done. So
Nice.
there's that. Cool. Yeah, and that's kind of like the high level of where Studio fits in. Uh, I know. Look, by the way, the user Calvin updated to John. So yeah, and back here, Mongoose supports a lot of other a lot of other different features as well. So you'll see things like
Yeah, that.
timestamps. Um, Timestamps is where these created at and update at come from. So like when you create a new document, Mongoose will store created at, and then every time you update it at, or every time you update the document, update at gets updated as well.
Mm.
Um, that happens regardless of whether you update the document using save or whether you use, say, user.update one. This will also update the updated at. And then the other big thing about updated at is it also handles nested objects. So like if we were to say, that friends here is instead of being just an array of object IDs, it's or well, better practice. Let's create a new property. One of the things one of the best practices I've learned with Mongoose is you don't change the types of existing fields. You just add new fields. So let's say best friend. Friend ID, and then sets. So let's see. So if I were to go here and trying to create a timestamp here. So now if I go in and give this document a new a best friend, let's see if, yeah, there we go. Okay. So if I go in here and give this document a best friend, let's say copy the existing friends. Yeah, so we're best friends now, Kelvin.
Yes, we
MongoDB
are.
says it's true.
Yeah,
So we go in here and
love it.
see Mongoose also added created at and updated at for this subdocument as well.
Awesome. So I say it's called an embedded. I don't speak MongoDB very well, but how is that different from like you defining the schema separately because you defined it inside the user schema?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, So here, best friend is what's called a subdocument. That means that best friend is stored as a property within the within this user document, as opposed to having a separate as opposed to having it entirely a separate document. That is mostly that serves two reasons. One is just keeping data co-located is good for developer experience, because when you look at a document, you can see all the relevant information in one place. And it's also a performance thing, because the idea with MongoDB is like documents are stored in contiguous, like at least pretty sure this is still accurate. I get it might be a couple of years out of date, but the general idea of MongoDB is reading one document is very fast. At least not always the case with other databases that might use things like log structure merge trees. So keeping all the data in one place ensures that you can read documents fast and quickly.
Nice. That's awesome. I could see so let's talk about um Populate a little bit. I love that feature because of course it's really nifty. Do you support nested Populate at this time?
Yes, we do. So you should be able to populate friends of friends as well. Let me go in here and just populate path friends, and then we go here and we say populate path friends. So let me just make this a little bit more readable, just so we can kind of see what's going on here. So instead of just
Yeah.
passing in a path to populate, we pass in kind of an option syntax where we say we populate friends, but then we also execute a sub nested populate for friends of friends. So I'd say the idea here would be, let me take this user, go here and give myself a friend. And then let's see. So so again, friends.map. I think we're gonna need a flat map. Maybe this works. Let's try this out.
Name.
Let's see. So this is saying that, okay, name is undefined. Yeah, well, maybe we just add a filter. Yeah, here we go. So codea.com, friends of friends includes this user with a very not good name. So, and this user has friends, but no friends of friends, and this user has a friend of friends. Yeah, nested
Awesome.
populate works well. Again, populate is another fun topic on the performance side. Probably
Mm-hmm.
about 7-8 years ago, MongoDB added support for a dollar lookup thing, or a dollar lookup aggregation stage. So this thing. Um, so MongoDB introduced kind of support for something join-like. Um, However, Mongoose's Populate does not use dollar lookup. It's a design decision that is open to some debate, but we made that choice for performance reasons. The way that this populate works is instead of using $lookup, we do find all these users. Then we execute a separate query to find all users based on friends, and then one more query to find friend of friends based on basically flattened out friend IDs. So this ends up being 3 queries as opposed to one lookup call. The reason for that is in the worst case, what happens with $lookup is you end up having to scan the foreign table every time for every
Mm-hmm.
document in the local table, if that makes sense. So like if you are scanning for if you're scanning for a user's friends with $lookup, um, you first have to scan
Mm-hmm.
the user table or the user collection. And then if you don't have any indexes on friend ID for each user, you have to scan every user in the user collection again. So it ends up
Okay.
kind of growing as an O of n squared loop. Whereas
Mm.
in the worst case, populate is not that bad. 3 queries can, in our experience, ends up being faster for the bad case where you don't have indexes.
Mm. Awesome. Like, so how do you handle things like, because now we're sending back all the properties, like how do we pick, or we could do that in JavaScript land, or does Mongoose help with that as well?
Mongoose
Like
helps with that as
just
well.
yeah.
There's a
Okay.
select property, so you say like we can select. We select underscore ID, name, email, and friends. So that's just the property, or that's all the properties we select. We can remove email from the projection, and then you'll see um, all the emails here are empty. But populating actually still works, which is good. We can also not,
Nice.
yeah. If you deselect friends, then populate will error out. Um, And yeah, you also mentioned briefly performance overhead of using ORMs. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the Mongoose Lean is one of the ways that you kind of can get out of Mongoose's performance overhead. Um,
Mm.
so when you execute a model.find like this one, we're finding users by friend emails. Mongoose Mongoose hydrates the result document. That is how Mongoose registers handles a bunch of validation logic, and that's how Mongoose registers its change tracking. So that's how Mongoose knows kind of if you update the user's email, it's just going to send that. It's just going to send that update. The way that's work or the lean function tells Mongoose to skip hydration entirely and just give me back the raw result. So that's one way that you avoid the overhead of ODMs. It's not, yeah, you find the overhead of using Mongoose to be very manageable, and we'll try our best to keep it as fast as possible, but it's not going to work for all cases. And if you're not going to do anything that involves change tracking or data validation, you might just use Lean. Because if all you're going to do is just send that data back to the server, then back to the client, you might as well just use Lean.
Mm.
Skip the hydration,
Yeah.
especially if you're not
Is it
using
possible?
variables.
Oh, okay. Is it like, is there like a config you could do so you don't have to pass lin every time you make a query somewhere?
Yes, I believe
Okay.
Mongoose has pretty good support for global options. So I think
Mm-hmm.
this works. I don't quite recall off the top of my head. TypeScript seems to think it's
Mm.
fine, but
Okay.
yeah, it is not a valid option to set. Okay. But then, the other option is Mongoose does have support for plugins. So, um, plugin architecture, general idea is takes in a schema. Or let's just skip the plugin side of things for now and introduce middleware first, because middleware is how you do things with plugins anyway. The
Okay.
idea with user schema, let's see. So we are trying to set lean on every query. So you can tell Mongoose, okay, before find, or rather, say before find and find one, I can go in and say, what does that mean? And this will make it so that by default, every find and find
Mm,
one call on the user schema will get late. Yeah, this
that's
is an
brilliant.
example of how a Mongoose middleware works. Is this basically means like, okay, before find and find one, leans and middleware supports all sorts of good stuff. Like you could also make this a regular expression. So this all will also cover things like user dot find one and update, delete, etc. So yeah, regular expression support for middleware function names. Just lean everything.
I love it. That's really
Yeah.
smart, like having um that that nifty feature. So I want to talk about how do you see, like, what are your right way, air quotes, to handle schema changes in a live app with Mongoose? Like, do you have any best practices that you'd advise for users?
Um, I'd say my general best practice for things to avoid is one, changing an existing properties type. I generally advise not to do that. Um, that basically means you need to migrate previous data. Um, you can
Okay.
in some cases, you can have Mongoose or use custom getters to translate data into new types, but probably best not to. So yeah, like here, if I
Mm,
were to instead of like changing friends to, if I wanted to change the type of friends to a document array, I would probably just change it to like friend properties or something like that. That's one.
mm,
Um, so yeah, adding a new property is easy. And if you want to add default values, like it's just easy as this. It's, empty object. Um, so yeah, adding new properties is easy. Deleting properties is also fairly easy in the sense that if you don't want to use a property anymore, you just remove it from your schema. And then later on, you can remove it from your database if you really want to. I'd say that's another neat advantage of using Mongoose is you can kind of soft delete fields from your schema. So like if there's a field
mm,
that you've kind of deprecated, you want to get rid of, but you're kind of scared about the implications of getting rid of it. What if something breaks? Um, Instead of just having to drop it from your database, you just remove it from your schema. So then nothing can access it. But then, uh, but then you end up. But then if you decide that okay, I deleting that field broke my app, I could just go in and add it back to the schema in one release, so I didn't have to drop the entire of the data in my database. That's one place where like the idea of having the schema live in your application is pretty neat. Yeah, and it's I think that's one of the things that really sets Mongoose apart, and one of the things that kind of gets a little bit of mind warping for people who come from working in SQL databases is when you're working with MongoDB and Mongoose, the application is where the schema lives. Um, so like your application is interpreting the data. The database just stores whatever you want it to store. Whatever data is in the database is there, and there's no valid or invalid data. Your application decides what's valid and invalid. Yeah, in short, add fields, remove fields. Try not to update existing fields. Use
okay.
defaults when if you really need to set values, and then on occasion, if you need to write a migration script to backfill some data, you can do that. But I find that happens in my experience in less than probably like 10 to 15% of cases where you add a new field.
Mm, awesome. I love it. I love it. Um, yeah, this has been good. You mentioned computer properties as a Vue head. I know what that is in Vue land, but I want to see the context in Mongoose and how useful it is.
Yeah. So user scheme of a virtual, let's say email domain. That's a useful one. So I could say, so here, if I were to, and then on the, so I added a property that that gets the domain of the email address. And then here on the front end, I can go in and change email to email domain. Let me just get rid of the select here because that'll end up causing an error.
Mm-hmm.
And go here and let me see if it actually worked. Huh. Why is, oh, duh. I get bit by my own issues. Okay.
Okay.
There we go. All right. I need to actually
Virtuals.
configure a schema to include virtuals in the front end
Okay.
output. Actually, not sure why that's not working. Let me just reset and restart. No, weird. So let's see. I have a virtual email domain.
Let me check that out too.
You don't email domain. Oh, what is that not working out? Oh, well, let me just also add.
Okay. I'm looking at Mongoose virtuals right now.
Okay, that's right. It's because lean.
Okay, the lane. Oh,
Yeah, it's the lean. Okay.
okay.
Remember when I said that it that skips that lean skips hydration? That also includes virtuals. Maybe that worked. No, still didn't work. Hmm. How
What have we?
frustrating.
Which is
Oh yeah, somebody's probably watching this show and just sees my issue and is probably laughing at me. But oh, it's okay.
okay.
Sometimes happens to me too. Let's see here. So when I load the page, I've got the list of users, which was on March.js on from users. Well, handy old console.log.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's. Do we need to set to JSON schema options to virtuals true from your doc? I'm looking at the
Good
doc.
idea. Actually, yeah. What we should do here is map user. We've got two objects virtuals. Shouldn't be
Oh, to
necessary
object.
because of this schema
Okay,
option.
yeah, we said
But
that already, right?
yeah, we
Yeah.
did.
That
But
crashed a lot of things.
yeah, that
I don't think
crashed a
to.
lot.
Yeah.
Oh, dope. Remember when we made everything lean by default?
Oh, middleware.
Oops. Sorry about that. This dot email.
It's fine. It's code. It
Yeah.
didn't tell us that. Hey, I have a middleware preventing this from happening.
Yeah, there we go. So now we have domains. Okay.
Mm.
So that's kind of how a
Yeah.
computer property works. When you serialize the object, Mongoose calculates the computer property, and then the property is updated kind of like whenever you access the property, including when you serialize the
Mm-hmm.
object. So like, let's say we have a console log where we get, it's just for now universal 0. So here's users of 0 console.log message,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a email domain hey.com. So like, let's say if I were
Mm-hmm.
to go here and users of 0.email equals test.com. Let's just print out, compare the email domain before and after. So before hey.com, after test.com.
Mm.
So yeah,
Nice.
computer property, yeah, gets recalculated every time you access it, including and
Hmm.
accessing it includes when you call to object.
Neat. I like it. Yeah. Is there any pairing that you know about, like in a full stack JavaScript setting where, like, because now I see you, um, having code all in one place is really nice, but is there like any pairing, like, let's say like templates that's shipping with like Mongos, and there's like a predefined way to like set up Mongoose to be the ORM in that kind of setup? Because now
Um,
like, we're using it in Next app. Is there any other one you know of?
so we have our sample apps repo has a few basic things like we have this. Let's see here. I'd say probably like the sample apps are the closest thing we have to like officially supported starters. So we have like a Discord bot. We have something that works with Netlify functions, like a base little e-commerce store. We have a TypeScript and Express app, and then we have the Next server actions. So those are decent enough starting points. But we don't really have anything that like auto does any sort of app scaffolding or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, but I'm sure you can find there's Mongoose kind of came out back in the days when things like Yeomon were popular, so I'm sure you can find a gajillion Mongoose starters out there.
Awesome. So yeah, we are almost at time. I want you to talk a little bit more about Mongo Studio and in the context, like, because AI, of course, like in our code demo, you've been using like it's like the prompts and all. So what's the future of AI inside like um Mongo Studio? Where do you think like you want to take it? If you're gonna tease us with some future features.
Um, and long list of features we want to support. We want to make it like a fully featured MongoDB GUI that supports that has kind of AI as native or as native as humanly
Mm-hmm.
possible. Because again, I think like AI just makes things so much easier. So like one of the things that I want to be able to do is when I go in here and edit the document, like I don't want to have to. Sometimes I don't want to have to just have like dig through this menu. Like, okay, fine, I can. Like if I want to update this document, sometimes it's easier to just find what I'm looking for, go in and edit or update stuff. But like, why don't I just have a Control Enter keyboard shortcut here where I could just tell AI what I want to do, and then it generates this JavaScript that I can review that does what I want it to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it, I think what I think AI is really good at, especially in this particular case, is just generating these like quick data analysis scripts or quick data update scripts that you execute once and don't want to execute again. Like sometimes I don't want to point and click through a GUI. Sometimes it's easier to just tell the computer what I want it to do, and that's what AI is for, and that's what we want to have here. So that's one thing. I would say, yeah, another thing that we're kind of building into Mongoose Studio that is going to be a little hard for me to demo, I think. Actually, no, maybe not. It's not a ChatGPT. Is dashboards. So we have the. I'm gonna have to open up Firefox. Sorry.
It's fine.
There we go. Um, one of the things we're also kind of trying to bake into Mongoose Studio is dashboards. So like you have basic BI tools out, or you have a lot of sophisticated BI tools out there. But right now, like BI tools are kind of siloed from data access tools, and I don't necessarily think that separation makes sense. Like, why am I editing my data in MongoDB Compass, but then I have to pull up like Tableau or something to generate dashboards for my clients, so I could have things like, oh boy. Yeah, that's bugged out. Sorry about that. Um, Let me see if I can generate. Darn it, demo effect. Should have had a demo prepared for this, but what general idea is, have the charts that were generated here,
Mm-hmm.
like generated this chart. I want to be able to add this to a dashboard. Um, right now, this
Mm,
is on local dev, so I can't quite generate a dashboard from it. Um, but the idea is you use the chat thread to generate dashboards of, say, monitoring a feature or generating a cohort analysis, um, seeing like a breakdown of how many users have adopted a new feature. Create a dashboard from that, share that with your product manager or whatever to show them what's going on, and make it so that you as a developer can generate these charts without having to learn a separate tool, and do it in a way that feels
mm,
kind of natural and native to you. Um, One of the things that working with tools like Tableau is just complicated because there's just so many net menus everywhere. I always struggle to get anything going in like Looker or Metabase. But in Mongoose Studio, dashboards are just code, and they're just JavaScript code based on that looks like code that you write in your application. So, so that makes it easier for you as the developer to generate a dashboard that you can share with your team.
yeah. So, from what I'm hearing, Mongoose Studio is sort of like gonna fit into like your workflow as sort of like a replacement for things like Compacts, and or Atlas, or
Um, yeah,
are
that's
meant to
the idea.
complement
Like
them.
right now we very rarely use MongoDB Compass anymore. There are still cases where Compass is useful, like if you want to bypass Mongoose entirely. Um, we do occasionally still use Compass, but I think probably for 99% of the time we use Mongoose Studio instead for analyzing data and debugging what's going on in production. So like I would say we're targeting making this mostly a replacement for something like Compass or Studio 3T. I'm not going to say that those tools are bad or ill-served for their use case. I just think that for a lot of developers, kind of having like a higher level GUI that knows your database schema and can support things like BI, AI chat, I think that provides a pretty meaningful improvement. At least it has in our experience. Um, yeah, we've been able to ship things a lot faster, fix bugs faster, and more importantly, communicate better um, with non-technical people on the team to show them the dashboards to show them like, okay, this feature is actually working. Here's how many people are using it.
I love it. That's awesome. Like, this has been really dope. I think a couple of things I like about Mongoose, like that is quality of life so far, is the validations, and the middleware is also like a very nifty thing. Um, of course, for that one time where we get bit by it because we set it and then we're trying to um get our computer props working and it wasn't. But it's amazing. Like I like it. It's really detailed. I've been looking at the docs as we've been on this, and I love it. Well done, Val, and to all the contributors to Mongoose. So anything you think we should have talked on that we did not, that you want to share?
No, not that I can think of. I think we talked about. I think we covered a lot of stuff.
Awesome. So we both work at the Node.js space, open source. Any advice for maintainers or open source users? Like, what are you thinking about these days about open source software? I don't know.
Um, well, in terms of being an open source maintainer, I'd say one lesson that I always try to impart on new open source maintainers. People try to say like, is it a marathon or a sprint? I say neither. I say it's a leisurely walk. Uh,
Yeah.
if you're maintaining a popular project, I think it's it's better to be in it for the long haul. And I mean, I've been in it for the long haul. I've been maintaining Mongoose for almost 12 years now. Um, Probably, yeah, nearly a third of my life. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I did, you know, if I did go at what I consider to be a reasonable pace. Sometimes that's too slow for people. Other times, sometimes I'm like catching up on issues and burning down the backlog. Other times things are piling up, and that's just kind of the way things go. But the reason I've been able to hold on this long is because I've taken my time and just taken care of myself as best I can and not burn myself out.
Mm, I love it. So yeah, so where does how can anyone that wants to s- like say hi or just ask you anything like reach you? So where are you active on
You
socials,
yeah, you can
emails?
find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, GitHub. Those are the
Okay.
places where I'm most active. I'm getting onto Discord as well, or trying to figure that out.
Oh, awesome. I'm gonna definitely get those links from you and put in the show notes. Thank you so much, Val. This has been an amazing session learning about Mongoose, Mongoose Studio, and MongoDB. Thank you for coming to TKYT.
Thank you, Tim.